Some people might hear the term Kickstarter or crowdfunding and think of GoFundMe, and
hmm
Kickstarter is not GoFundMe because that's a lot of like, oh, we're giving from our hearts to support someone. And this is different.
I've heard you mention in the past that Kickstarter is bringing a platform to you and you're bringing a platform to Kickstarter. And so it's a way to expand your reach to a new audience. Welcome back to the Business of Christian Fiction. I'm your host, Rachel Fehrenbach, and joining me today is my friend Emilie, and she's going to talk all about Kickstarter and using Kickstarter to get your novel off the ground. If you are considering self-publishing and being an indie author, you probably have seen many other indie authors use Kickstarter to get their novel out into the world. And so I know I have contemplated it, and I feel like I don't really fully understand the benefits or even the cons to it. And so I asked Emilie to come onto the podcast and share with us because she's actually used it before for her novel Suspended in the Stars. And she's using it again for her second in the series, Falling Through the Black. Did I get the title right? All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Emilie, for joining me. Would you just quickly share with the listeners who you are, what you write, and then we'll get into the conversation about Kickstarter.
Sure. Yeah. So I am an author, a graphic designer who focuses on book cover design. I am a photographer and a podcaster.
So many hats.
And yeah, so I do wear a lot of hats. But you will know me under the name E.A. Hendryx for my young adult science fiction novel. And then I also write under a couple of different pen names. Well, my actual name, Emilie Haney, I write romantic suspense and cozy mystery. And then under Belle Renshaw, I write sweet romance. And just I like to write a lot of books. I think that's the main thing is just that I love fiction of all kinds. And as you said, Rachel, I did put out my first debut young adult science fantasy novel, Suspended in the Stars. I'll hold it up because I have it here. I was able to design
So
the
pretty.
cover, and this is the Kickstarter limited edition book that I was able to produce through Kickstarter, which is really exciting. And then the second one, Falling Through the Black, it begins April 5th and goes until the 26th. So there's just a lot of moving pieces, which I'm sure we'll jump into with Kickstarter. But beyond that, I mainly just read a lot of books and walk my dogs quite frequently, and then end up with a cat on my lap at most times because she just loves to be near me. And I did name her Pages, so
I
she
was just
comes
gonna
right,
say her
honestly.
name is Pages, right? Because I know I've seen her
Yeah.
on your Instagram before, and I'm like,
Yes.
that's such a fun name for a cat to
I
be
know.
on.
She's
That
so fun.
she's there with you when you're writing, so that's so cute.
Yeah. Well, and on the other side of it too, I guess I should probably fill out the bio a little bit. I have been traditionally published and I've been independently published. And then I guess you could say Kickstarter published, but I see that along the lines of independent as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice because I have seen both sides of that coin in a sense. And I see the strengths to both.
hmm
But also, yeah, I guess you could say some disappointment is what led me to Kickstarter. And that was a really good thing.
That's awesome. Okay, there's so much that we're going to get into in a short amount of time, and I know we're not going to be able to cover everything, but I want to make sure that by the time somebody gets done listening to this, they'll have enough information to know whether or not they want to continue to research
Mhm.
Kickstarter for themselves. And so, why don't we start there with you said the duration of your Kickstarter was
Mhm.
April, what
5th through
is
the 26th. Yeah.
April 5th through the 26th. And why don't we start there? Because I have always been a little confused
Mhm.
about the Kickstarter and then like pre-sales and
Yeah.
publication dates. So can you
Mhm.
explain the difference between a Kickstarter
Mhm.
campaign that lasts for a short window and like a pre-sale window and a publication date?
Absolutely. And it might help to start even before that and explain that I think some people might hear the term Kickstarter or crowdfunding and think of GoFundMe. And
hmm
Kickstarter is not GoFundMe because that's a lot of like, oh, we're giving from our hearts to support someone. And this is different. It is like a purchase. So basically, with Kickstarter, you can choose, I think your window can be up to 30 days if you choose, but I find a nice 3-week length of campaign works well for me. And so, what you do when you're starting a Kickstarter, I guess you could even go from backing a Kickstarter, is that you will go to the Kickstarter website and they have a platform for you. And so that's where I've put in all of my information about what my book is about, the things that will be included in the book, because a Kickstarter edition often tends to have more things or,
Right.
fun add-ons or like special cover elements, things like that. But they don't have to, but sometimes they do. And you'll have basically a whole section for rewards, a whole section about what the story is about, and then what we call add-ons, basically, which would be kind of like a place for your backlist, things like that. So that's basically what you start with your campaign. And the difference about putting a book on Kickstarter versus putting it up for like a pre-sale or like pre-orders, which will come later in the year for me as well, because I do both, is that a Kickstarter edition is allowing people to join you. That's that crowdfunding aspect of it. And so they're committing basically to say, I will back this campaign for whatever tier they prefer. So maybe an ebook tier or paperback or hardcover or a special, limited edition box of goodies along with the book, things like that. They can choose however they want to back. Now, the key here is that every person who puts their book up on Kickstarter chooses a funding goal. So,
Mm-hmm.
my last one for Suspend in the Stars, my goal was $2,000. And that was me saying, hey, if I can get enough people interested in this project and I can get you to help me fund this, then it's going to happen. And that's key because there are some projects that don't fund. Some people will set their goal very low because they already know they're going to produce the book.
Mm-hmm.
But like me, I was a little hesitant and I wanted to have the bells and whistles. And so I wanted to make sure I could make that happen. So once that goal is met, that means that after that period of time, so for me, it's 3 weeks, but for someone else, it could be 10 days or 21 or whatever. Once that period ends and it's funded, then everyone is charged. So, if you use a credit card, that type of thing, it'll go through.
Mm-hmm.
So that basically is giving you like the reason why, at least for me, you would want to back a Kickstarter is the fact that you get a lot of things way early. So, as an example, with my campaign, it will start in April. Will end by the 26th. Hopefully, it will be funded. And then everything on my end kind of goes into hyper production. So the
Okay.
book is 90% written at this point. I already have a slot with my editor. Everything is already moving and we're on the track there. The cover's already done, things like that. But once it's funds, then I can start ordering like my fun swag things that I've created and things like that because I'll have the money from the Kickstarter. And then
Okay.
once my book is edited, I can put the book, like the actual book itself, into production through a printer that I go through because I do a whole print run. So it's a whole bunch of moving pieces, but everyone who backs the Kickstarter receives the ebook months earlier. So my
Mm-hmm.
release for Falling Through the Black will probably be, I think it's November, I want to say November 5th, but I'm not, that's not a hard date yet. So that's in 2024. But everyone who backs the Kickstarter will receive their book, hopefully from me by at least by July, if not
Okay.
before. It all depends on if I get everything done. And that's on my time frame there.
Yeah.
But it will definitely be before it goes live. So I guess you can kind of see, yes, someone could choose to just wait and purchase the book when it comes out. I would call it wide. So, through any
Mm-hmm.
retailer that you would want to purchase it through. But you actually get some extra incentives to purchase it through the Kickstarter. Not only do you get it early, but like this cover that I was showing you on the hardback, it's not available anywhere else in hardback to be purchased. It's only available on Kickstarter. Yes, it is available on the paperback, but I changed it for the wide hardcover basically.
Okay.
All of the art things, there's things called stretch goals which we can get into, but it makes sense, I guess, a little bit if you're a fanatic, if you enjoy special editions, if you are interested in reading a book earlier, especially after the slight, cliffhanger I left people on in book one. Not too bad, but just a little bit. So things like that. Hopefully that it's a long answer, but hopefully that kind of gives your listeners like a kind of a concept of what it means to come to a Kickstarter that
Yeah.
way.
I think that's really good. My question to you is, you held up your book and you have the special edition
Mhm.
cover, and I see a lot of fantasy, sci-fi, a lot of authors who maybe have like character art, or
Mhm.
maybe have these things that just, maps and
Yeah.
very visual, or like extras that just naturally go
Mhm.
with their story. Do you think that Kickstarter is good for stories that are just a little bit more like contemporary genres? Have you
I think
seen
it
anybody? I
yeah.
haven't seen anybody. I haven't come across that,
Yeah.
but I'm just curious where a
Oh,
story
yeah.
doesn't necessarily have like all those extras to
Yeah.
them, you know?
No, and I think that's a great point. I know better, I think, about the science fiction. Let me put it this way. When I pitched out, Suspended in the Stars to publishers, I knew it was a risk because it's a science fiction. Now there's fantasy
Yeah.
elements, so it is like a weird melding of the
Mhm.
two. And I think that that made publishers afraid, which I get it. Like,
No, I don't,
will it
yeah.
will
Mhm.
it sell type of thing.
Mhm.
So if you're looking at it from like the business side of it, it makes sense why they would say no. But that's where Kickstarter steps in and is a great place for it. Now, that's not to say that it's exclusively for those. I think that my friend CJ and I talk about this a lot because she also ran a Kickstarter as well for her dystopian novels. Um, and we've come back to this point, which is first of all, do your research. I mean, and that's not to, I'm not just throwing that answer out as like,
Right.
I'll leave it there.
No,
But,
everybody should
you
be
know,
doing their research, yes,
yeah,
for sure.
jump on Kickstarter and start searching for things because they do have a wide array of projects that come through. Now, I will say I know Becky Wade has done a Kickstarter for I think was it both of her books. She funded the audiobooks for
I
both
was
of
gonna
hers.
say, I
Now,
know she did it for her
yeah,
audiobooks. I'm not sure
I
about.
don't recommend a campaign that only focuses on an audiobook because those do not tend to do well.
Mhm.
You want to be selling something more along the
Yeah.
lines of that as well. But I know she was successful on that. Now, she has a great audience.
I
And
was
so
just
I
gonna say
think
she has
that,
a very
yeah,
large platform already.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to look at like who are you bringing with you in general. I mean, I had
Mhm.
to do it too. Even though I might be publishing in a more popular type of genre, I still had to think like, are there people who will go through and, actually back the project?
Mhm.
I think another thing to think of too, like with what you brought up is you don't have to have all the bells and whistles. I have experience in creating merch. It's part of my job. And I've done that for years now. So to me, it was actually a fun thing. And it was like, oh, this is the chance where I can throw stuff out and, see what people want and things like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't need to have all of those things. I did mention stretch goals before, and if we want to get into that, we can. But
Why don't we go ahead and get into that now, because
okay.
like it's a pretty good spot. What exactly is a stretch goal?
Yeah. And that was another thing that I had to like kind of share with my audience when we first funded. So we got past that $2,000 mark and I was like floored, but I was like, keep sharing. Like we need to keep this going. And I'm sure some people were like, well, why? You've met your funding goal.
Mhm.
So oftentimes what people say about Kickstarter is that your goal is what did it say? Like your floor, not your ceiling. So
Mm.
that's your
Okay.
base level, we're scraping by as long as we hit this. Some people will go for like a $10,000 goal because they know they can't produce what they need to without that. I wanted to go lower, hoping that it would go higher, and it did.
Mhm.
So all of that to say, once you hit that, your funding goal, stretch goals are what takes you hopefully to the next level and the next and the next.
Okay.
So oftentimes, like I will not reveal my stretch goals for probably the first few days just because you don't know where you're going to land.
Right.
And I want to do things that will entice people at the right levels. So, for example, I've set my goal again at $2,000. I think that that was a fair goal for me. I've done the same for book two. So I won't release all the ideas that I have, but once we hit, maybe day 3 or something like that, we'll see how long I can hold out. I want to entice people to keep, maybe
Mhm.
they bump up their pledge or maybe they reach out and share with other people. But my last one, let's see, I had an enamel pin that I designed. I had a backer Q&A, which was super fun. So a live, show with people where they were able to ask me questions. I had character art specifically for the book, like commissioned. Oh, and then I reached 10K and I said that everybody would get the additional dust jacket. So basically the new design that I would do wide so that they wouldn't have to feel like they needed to purchase the hardcover again.
Okay.
It was a mistake to offer that because I had to cut them down by hand, but I have now since found a printer that will do them better than what I could do. But all of that to say, those were some ideas of just
Hmm.
enticing things that people wanted. And so to be able to offer that to them, I love the fact of that because then if you're purchasing a paperback for like, I think it's like $25 or something like that. Yes, that's a little high. And most prices on Kickstarter will be higher than what you're used to, but you're getting all of that additional swag, especially if you backed it a physical tier. You're getting
Hmm.
a ton of different things in that package and you're getting the experience as well and
Yeah.
thanked in the back, things like that. So stretch goals are mainly what you want to help keep pushing the envelope, I guess you could say, in a sense.
Yeah.
But all of that to say, if we're talking about maybe a campaign that has not a lot of bells and whistles, there's a lot you can do that doesn't have to be, created based, I guess. Like I
Hmm.
said, the Q&A, maybe it's more specifically like a spoiler chat type of situation you could
Okay.
do. You could always add a short story or something like that, which I also included as one of my stretch goals. And that was a really popular one that I hadn't anticipated. So it is more work for you as the author, but
Yeah.
there's a way to kind of work around it where you're not just flooding the campaign with a lot of stuff. But it just depends, I think, on who your audience is as well.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think it sounds fun because it invites your readers to participate in like that. Um, they're part of the creative process. Like they get to be a part of
Yes.
that, like getting this thing off the ground. What my question to you is when you're pricing out your tiers, is the goal to fund future copies of the book, or is the goal to just fund the copies for the people who are backing the Kickstarter?
Mhm. That's a great question. I think for me, it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
So when I did price my campaign, first of all, I did a ton of research and I have backed a lot of campaigns. It's kind of addictive. Once you get into it, and you're like, oh, that looks amazing. Oh, I want to support them,
Yeah.
keep backing and backing. But I kind of tried to get mid-range. So I wasn't the highest price point. I wasn't the lowest. But there's so many things to consider as well. So like for a limited edition, hardcover, I don't even remember specific pricing at this point, but you're not only taking just the price of the book, you're also taking into account, well, the stretch goals will have to be paid for, the time to ship everything out, the shipping itself, which is unfortunately, if you're going through Kickstarter, backed, well, let me put it this way. If you choose to do it this way, it can be backed into the price of your Kickstarter. So it might look like an impressive number that you've reached, but maybe a couple of $1,000s of that is just shipping alone.
Shipping.
And
Yep.
then they
It's so
take,
expensive.
yeah, they take a cut off the top, all of that. So those a lot of things you have to think of. For me, I did want to be able to purchase a good number of paperbacks, mainly
Hmm.
because I knew that's what I was going to sell the most of, or at least hoped that I would. Um, and they'll be the most I think I could say most profitable for me to sell afterwards, and that's
Hmm.
funding me to be able to write more. So I would say I didn't set out to price my tiers like, ooh, I want to make sure I have X amount of dollars overage so that I can fund this. But when I was able to work at the calculations and everything through that, I was able to see, okay, I can afford to do a good print run. Now, also, the higher number that you order, the less amount you're paying for your books. So my hardcovers, I only bought, I think it was like 125 of them. And that's all I could afford to purchase. And that's all that was covered, and I have some extras, of course, for this next Kickstarter, but not a large number. And so I was able to kind of funnel in more for the paperbacks. I won't probably do as high of an order of book two, just because that's kind of how things go.
Yeah.
You just, I was going to sell book one type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's not maybe the best answer to your question, but I think it depends on how you're approaching your campaign.
Hmm.
You can expect, I mean, like we said, with the fees of Kickstarter and the fees of processing credit card fees and things like that. And then in addition to that, like, will you make anything as,
Hmm.
because I think people see the high number and they immediately think, whoa, I funded over $10,000. She made $10,000. No,
No.
I did not. I made a very, very small portion of that. And most of it honestly went to paying for the artists that I've paid for out of my own pocket,
Right.
paying for actually, if I included my editor, I made nothing technically
Mhm.
because I paid for the editor in advance. So,
Mhm.
it's just stuff
Yeah.
like that. I don't say that to be like, woe is me. It's just like
No,
the
I think
reality.
I think it's important to say that, to mention that reality, because I think we forget that that with the low cost of books, authors really aren't making a high profit margin off of books. It's just not
Mhm.
a reality. And so it's when I look at these Kickstarter's tiers, that's something that I've been curious about, because some of the tiers can be a little bit bigger, but you're giving them these additional things, and that's all costing. Unless it's a digital product, it's probably going to
Right.
cost shipping. It's a material
Mhm.
cost to it, and so it's neat to be able to kind of like bring the price point of the book up a little bit with those,
Mhm.
but really
Mhm.
at the end of the day, are you really making that much more of a profit margin? So I guess it goes back to like goals that you set for yourself with Kickstarter. I would assume, and this may be not a good assumption, but that really the goal of a Kickstarter is not to make a ton of money off the book, but rather to just gauge interest in the book,
Mhm.
get a community around that book that can maybe then go out and share about that. I know that I've heard you mention in the past that Kickstarter is bringing a platform to you, and you're kind of bringing a platform to Kickstarter. And
Mhm.
so it's a way to kind of expand your reach
Mhm.
to a new audience essentially. But it's really probably, if you're going into Kickstarter with thinking it's going to help you make a ton of money off your book, probably not gonna be
Yeah.
the case, but it could
Mhm.
be a really vital way to legitimate way to gauge interest and get it going and getting it out
Mhm.
there, that first layer of releasing it. Would you agree
Well,
with that?
I totally agree, and I think it was the question that I had, right? I mean, I could have just taken it and put it out, independently published. I mean, I've done that for my other sweet romance books, so it was not something that was out of my grasp. But I had watched my friend CJ go through it, and I was like, wow. First and foremost, and I think you already mentioned this, but the community aspect of just people coming around, I really try to focus, especially on this next campaign, and just saying, like, this is us together producing this book. Like, yes, I wrote it and it does benefit me, but I want it to be a great experience for the reader as well. And so that's an aspect of it for sure. But then also just kind of it's a wider net, right? Like anything that can help you, especially you as an independent author, spread your net is a good
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as it doesn't cost you, hundreds of dollars or whatever,
Yeah, true.
which, marketing can.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big part of it. And I mean, I'll be honest, I had my husband sit down with me because he's not a book person, but he is a math person. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to be able to charge for these tiers that make sense? And
Mhm.
I had other people who had run campaigns also look over those, and actually they told me in some of them I needed to raise my tiers because and it's that weird part, right? But people who come to Kickstarter are expecting to pay
Right.
more. You're probably going to lose some of your original readers or maybe people who thought they were your readers and they're like, "Oh, I can't pay that much for a special edition." Totally get it. And that's where you can offer them, "Don't worry, it will be out later this year. You can purchase
Yeah.
it this way." But part of that is just understanding, like, okay, this is kind of the mentality of Kickstarter, and the people who are consistently backing on Kickstarter, they get it and they're there for it, right? So it isn't a sure thing, but more than likely, as long as you've done your due diligence on your campaign, Kickstarter will say, "Hey, check out this campaign to other people. You might like this." And that is
Mhm.
awesome. Like that's the best part is because it's like this inner marketing type of thing that they have going on, which is very helpful.
I can see how that could be really beneficial. So, at what point would you suggest a person is ready for a Kickstarter? At what point should they make an announcement, set their Kickstarter campaign dates? At what point
Mhm,
in the writing,
mhm,
publishing process would that be ideal?
mhm. I'm gonna say initially it kind of depends. It depends on what kind of writer you are because For me, I can say, I mean, I just finished a crazy week of like writing ridiculous amounts of words to
I'm
get
gonna
to one of
interrupt
my
you here
deadlines.
because I have been following Emily doing this week, where she's literally writing 2 books at the same time,
It
and
was
I'm like,
bananas.
"How are you even doing this?"
Not well. I joked on, like, I think it was on a Threads thing. I was like, "I haven't seen my husband in a week." Like, it's not true, but, like, it's kinda like,
Feels like it.
"Hey,"
Yeah.
and just go back to writing. Um, but, I mean, thank the Lord that that one book is off my plate, so now it's just one. But I say that a little tongue in cheek, but honestly, I know I can get it done. I know I can
Mhm.
have my book now, it does not need to be to my editor by the time my campaign starts. That's more of a me goal. And I mean, I've seen several campaigns who they don't send it to their editor until the campaign has funded and they have their funds because that's how they're paying for their editing. I do think
Mm,
that is valid. I think you have to ask yourself, well, if you have to decide, first of all, how long is my window?
mm,
And this is something you just communicate to your readers, your followers, whatever, is like, hey, as an example with my campaign being in April, I am guaranteeing loosely, June, July, somewhere in there, the latest August to get my book out ebook to everybody. Now,
right.
the print is very dependent on time schedules and things like that.
Mhm.
But that was my decision. It would be totally fine if I said, you're not going to get your book until January 2025.
Yeah.
Just like letting
Because
people know
you're
that.
you're letting people I would say that the key here is that you set the expectation,
Yes,
and people
exactly.
can then choose to join in that. They
Hmm.
can opt
Hmm.
into it, whether or not they're
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, I agree to this.
Yes.
This is the expectation. I'm going to come
Exactly.
alongside of you."
Now, I would caution for maybe someone who's never published before, it's a lot. Like, it's a lot to learn. Even if you're just going to source your books through Ingram Spark, you still have to make sure that your designer has all of their, things
Mhm.
together and that everything is right. So, I would say make sure that when you do decide that you're, going to launch that you have kind of at least in your mind, maybe written out somewhere too. This is how it's going to go, like a roadmap type of thing.
Mm.
I've seen, I think the most successful campaigns have something that's like that. I didn't on my first one just because I didn't really realize how much I told people, this is what I see happening, but I'm going to do a graphic this time so people will be able to see very specifically my goals. And if those things, are going to stray one way or the other, then it's just letting people know. And I think that's probably the other side of it is communication is really key. That might be something we touch on in a minute, but all of that to say when you're starting, or deciding to start, I guess, your campaign, um, I would suggest making sure that you have a nice long window of like I think they call it the pre-launch page, is having that pre-launch page up. I've had mine up for a couple of weeks now. It should have been longer.
Okay. So
The
how
beauty
long would you suggest?
I mean, I wanna say they let you do it up to I wanna say it's 6 months, it could be a year, but I'm not positive on that, I would
Oh,
need to
okay.
check on the Kickstarter website, but you can have it up for a good long while, and so the thing that you do is you might write in, like I said, I think I will be publishing on, April 5th. But I don't have to. I could decide to delay that. It's mainly on me to press that "I'm ready to launch" button.
Yeah.
So having that page up, it just has a header where I don't show my cover yet because I do my cover reveal on the day of launch, which I think is very like it creates a lot of stir, right? You're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I wanna get this book." So it has that cover up, and I think it maybe has I don't even know if it has a line about your book at all. It's just kind
Okay.
of there and then there's a button that says click to notify me on launch. And that is key to get people to follow you for that. So wherever you're at, make sure you have that up for a good amount of time
Okay.
because the more people that you have that are being notified
Yeah.
when you launch your project, the better.
This is a concept I read in a book called How to Launch Anything.
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's what it's called. It's written by, and now I'm totally spacing, but I'll put this in the show notes because it's a very short book, but it's about the guy who kind of um, I started, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
the idea of launching stuff
Okay.
online. And
Oh, yeah.
so he talks about creating that runway, and that the
Yeah.
longer of a runway you have, the better you have for takeoff. And so
Hmm.
it kind of goes along with what you're saying. The more you can generate a buzz about this before you actually go into the launch, it's better for
Mhm.
you because
Yeah.
it takes a bit to get people to notice.
Yeah.
I think they
Oh,
say something
yeah.
like you have to say it 20 times
Yeah.
before somebody even starts paying attention. So,
Well, it's funny to me because it's like I've told, I've mentioned it in my stories, I mentioned it on my page, but I underestimate, and I'm sure that most people who are listening do as well, the amount of actually how annoying you need to be for everyone to be able to see something. Because I hate it. I really
I
don't
do it.
don't
Yeah,
like
same.
promoting myself so often. But it always reaches just a slightly different subset of people, and so the more you share, the more that people are being directed to that page,
Hmm.
which is really helpful. But yeah, to know if you're ready, you have done your research, you've set up your page to the best of your ability. There is a really great Facebook group called Kickstarter. What is it? Kickstarter for authors, I think. And then there's an advanced group as well. Something like advanced Kickstarter for authors, something like that. They're free to join, but there is so much knowledge in those groups, and people will willingly go and critique your pre launch page
Oh,
before, or
wow.
actually, I should say your actual campaign that's hidden behind that pre-launch page.
Hmm.
You can allow people to see it and make notes and
Oh,
things.
that's
And
a
so
good
it's
idea.
very, very helpful. And they'll
Yeah.
tell you might want to add more photos, or this part isn't clear. And I've done it for some people just as like, kind of give
Yeah.
back type of thing in the group. So you've
That's
had
really
that looked
wise
through.
because I know I have
Mhm.
seen people's Kickstarters. Like I have had a couple friends who have done it and
Mhm.
or even just come across it, through like people's reels and things. And
Mhm.
there's sometimes I get on there and I'm like, I don't even really understand what your Kickstarter's for. It's not, and
Very
it's
true.
probably really clear to them because the product,
Yeah.
I mean, it's always clear to us, right? For our
Right.
own things. But
Yeah.
when it's a complete stranger who is completely new to you, it's always
Yes.
good to have a second,
Yes.
3, 4 pairs of eyes
Yeah.
looking it over and
Oh,
just saying
yeah.
like, this is clear, this is not clear. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think if you've had those things and your book is in a good place, whether you have secured an editor, or I would have somebody on tap if you have not yet
Yeah.
already, sent them to it, then I'd say you're probably ready to go for it. And I think that the hardest part, especially for a creative, is to say yes to something and then have it fail. We don't
Yeah.
like that term fail. We don't like rejection. We don't like, criticism.
Yeah.
I don't. Um, but my friend Amanda Aller, she has done a couple of very successful campaigns with her books, Children of the Earth and Daughter of the. I always get them mixed up. What is it? I have them over here on my shelf. There it is. Daughter of the Sun, Children of the Earth. There we go. But her first campaign for Daughter of the Sun, it failed. Now I say that in quotation marks. I think she raised over $7,000,
Wow.
but at the end of it, she didn't make her 10K mark. And so it
Mm.
was not able to fund. So I've heard her talk about kind of the struggle of that, and people still reached out. They still supported her, even though the campaign itself had like not gone through, basically hadn't funded. And
Mhm.
then she went back and she did another campaign and it was successful. But she took that as a learning experience. She didn't take that as, oh, nobody wants to support my book. Now,
Right.
if you set your
I
goal at
mean, seriously, if
$500,
7,000
yeah,
people
yeah,
or
right,
$7,000
exactly.
like was like people were willing to give her money for it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So I think if you set your goal very low, which some people suggest like $500, you're kind of telegraphing like this is going to happen no matter what.
Mhm.
Obviously it depends on your audience. And that is a great mindset to have if you already know that you're going to be putting your book out and you already have everything taken care of. That's an even better place to be in, I think, if you're going to want to do a Kickstarter, because at that point, it's all gravy, right? Like you're
Yeah,
just like, I'm just
that's
adding
true.
more readers
Yeah.
into this whole thing that we call, book
Yeah.
launching and whatnot. I think it's a little bit harder if you're looking at like, I need $12,000 or I'm not going to make this project happen. That's just a different place to be in. So
Mhm.
all of that to say, don't look at, not making your goal as like a failure. See it more as like a learning experience.
I think that's very wise of you to say that. I think that's something that we should really probably embrace in anything that we're doing with our books because
Mm-hmm.
it can be so easy. Like you said, getting rejection from a publisher,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you're talking about it on social and nobody's really engaging with you about your book.
Mm-hmm.
Like it could be in a couple different avenues, that
Yeah.
idea of like failure, but it doesn't mean you should just give up. Like
Yeah.
it just might mean adjust,
Yes.
recalibrate a little bit, and try again. So
Mhm.
you had mentioned earlier about communication being really vitally
Mhm.
important in having a Kickstarter campaign. Can you go into that a little bit more for us?
Yes. So one of the things I heard now, again, I went into my Kickstarter a little blind. I had backed, like I said, several Kickstarters, but even backing my friend CJ, like I saw a lot of the process. I was able to ask her a lot of questions, but you kind of don't know something until you've really jumped into it. And so
Mhm.
just even setting up the page was like overwhelming. I just spent a lot of time up till 2 a.m. like doing little details. I'm very like what's the word? Like perfectionist.
Yes.
So that's a problem. But yeah, it was
You're
not
a
good.
designer. It makes
I
sense.
It's true. It kinda comes with the territory.
Yeah.
But once all that was done, then it's out there, right? So
Mhm.
at that point, it's a little like you've put out your book and you're kind of like, "I hope people buy it," type of thing.
Right.
So that's when it jumps into this next level. So there's communication on Kickstarter, and then, of course, there's communication on every other channel that you have. And goodness, people probably got a little sick of me saying, "Kickstarter this and Kickstarter that," but I warned them. I
Mhm.
warned my newsletter subscribers. I warned my Kickstarter, or excuse me, my Instagram followers. I warned literally everyone. This is going to be a very heavily saturated time of promotion for me. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to deal with it. And people
Yeah.
were very kind and they totally understood. And they're much more willing to go along with that, knowing there is an end date in sight, in a
Yeah.
sense. I'm always going to talk about my
Because it's
book.
only like 3 weeks that you're really yeah.
Exactly. So I'm sending more newsletters than I ever would, things like that.
Mhm.
So on that side of it, my regular channels, they were kind of flooded in a sense, but I tried to make it very personal. A little bit more about like how am I handling these things, not just, hey, will you buy my book or whatever, more like
Mhm.
the experience. Now on the Kickstarter side of things, it's a lot of fun because they have the chance for you to do updates that go out to everyone who's backed the project. There's like a $1 tier you can back at, so you're receiving those updates. If maybe there's that one stretch goal that you're like, okay, if they hit this stretch goal, I'm gonna back it,
Yeah.
that type of thing. Those people will like kind of follow along, and maybe they might become larger backers. They might just stay at the dollar tier, but those updates became kind of like I wouldn't call it necessarily a lifeline, but they were fun, and I just had a blast with them. I used memes, I used silly GIFs, I used weird pictures of myself, my cat, all my
Yeah.
animals, all those things, because I really wanted me to shine through, because that at the
Mhm.
heart of it, yes, we are producing a product together, but I am the mind behind it, and I have found, I believe this is true for all of marketing, you market you and then all the things that you do tend to kind of they're easier, I guess, for other people to palette,
Right.
yeah, in a sense.
It reminds
um
me of, like, when a certain sneaker drops and people will, like, stand in line for it, and it's like
yeah,
they didn't come up with the sneaker. They
yeah,
didn't, they're not, like,
yeah,
benefiting from it other than they get to wear these cool shoes, right? But they,
right.
like, have this affinity for it and, like,
Mhm.
affection towards this brand, and they're willing
Mhm.
to spend hours of their
Yeah.
life for it because they like the brand. They like
Yeah.
the ideas around it, the community around it. And so the same
Mhm.
thing's true when we're marketing anything that we're
Mhm.
putting out there, you know? We have to
Mhm.
be authentically us because people are buying into who we are
Mhm.
as well as
Yeah.
the products that we're creating, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So those were a lot of fun, and I think, like, that's something that you may not think of, I think, going into a Kickstarter, especially if you've never run one before. You're like, "Okay, yeah, I need to do backer updates," but thinking about, "Well, what do I say in them? What do I share? What's too much? What's not enough?
Yeah.
How many times do I send it?" Things like that. I don't have a perfect algorithm, but I just know that it was a ton of fun, and I decided to just let my what I would call my nerd flag fly, and I put in as much Star Trek and Star Wars in there as I liked, and people seem to like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. That's fun. So, for somebody who is contemplating doing a Kickstarter, what would be your like top level advice for them? Like your number one thing that you would tell them to pay attention to?
Ooh, boy. Well, after do your research, because that we already said that one.
Yeah.
Um, oh, that's a great question. It's a hard question because there's like a lot of levels there. Um, I mean, I feel like this is part of the do your research, but I would say become a backer to a couple of different
Mm,
campaigns and spend like a good amount of time on the Kickstarter
yeah.
website because I think knowing anything about what you're doing, whether like that was for me, like figuring out, okay, how do I use Ingram Spark to produce my books after, so the ones that were not part of the print run, well, I had to figure out how do I do my hardcovers for them, things like that. I had to spend time in Ingram Spark to figure it out. And I worked with some friends who knew stuff and things like that. So I would say along the lines of researching, make sure that you're part of it because I don't think it's great to go in because it'll show. It'll say like Emily I think it says like EA Hendrix or something like that, and then it'll say like how many campaigns I've created and how many I've backed. So people are
Mm.
gonna know, oh, if it was just Emily down the block, 0 campaigns backed, I'm not really part of the community of
Yeah.
Kickstarter, and people will notice that.
Hmm.
And then in addition to that, make sure that you have somebody that's like either has done one or is willing to like walk through it with you because I definitely needed advice from people. Well, obviously that Kickstarter group was extremely helpful.
Hmm.
But more than that, I just needed people that were there that were cheering me on the side. Just saying like you're doing great. Don't let the numbers like ruin you. It's very easy to be like, oh, we're up, $50. Oh, we lost 100. Oh, like
Yeah.
it's not healthy. And I guess my final piece of advice also would be like, you're not going to get a lot done during the weeks of your campaign because there's just a lot of like, oh, I have to promote this and oh, I have to do this and that and the other. So like, don't plan on doing a lot of things while you're kickstarting.
Makes sense. For somebody who's listening to this and they're like, okay, I kind of like what she's saying about Kickstarter. I think this might be a good thing for me to look into for my book. Um, First of all, before I ask this next question, would you say that somebody needs to understand the self-publishing process, like for going wide, or even if you're just
Hmm.
on KDP or Ingram Spark,
Hmm.
should they understand that process before they try to do a Kickstarter? Or do you think
Hmm.
you can kind of figure those out side by side?
I think you can figure them out side by side. I
Okay.
think that Kickstarter does actually give you a little bit of leeway if you're taking the route that I am. Now, some people I think there was a woman who I just backed her Kickstarter. She went extremely viral on TikTok. And so she used that to channel into promoting her book on Kickstarter. And I think she raised over $60,000 or something like that.
Gosh, wow.
900 people backed it, which I thought was awesome.
Oh,
Now,
that's
but
so
that's
cool.
a fraction, right, of what she went viral with. So that's something to consider too. 'Cause
Yeah,
she had like 12 million followers on her, so
that's so crazy.
numbers are there.
Yeah.
But all that to say, I think she was going to release the book within a few weeks of the campaign ending and then release the actual wide book right after that as well.
Hmm.
I'm not quoting it great here, but it was a very rapid thing. It was not, oh, like me, I'm going to give myself until November to put out the
Hmm.
book. So if you chose to do it similar to what I'm doing, you're still having to figure out things like how do you deliver an ebook to someone when you're
Hmm.
not publishing it? And I use
Yeah.
BookFunnel, but things like that. So you have to figure out those things. But as long as you've given yourself some time in between that and you have a plan for at least how you're going to get the Kickstarter people their books, start
Hmm.
there. If you need to push your release date back and you're independently publishing, no problem, right? Because
Right.
now, the only problem would be if you set up a pre-order, you have to make sure you hit that window. That's the only
Right.
thing that I would caution people against. But if you have time, give yourself some time, figure out the Kickstarter
Hmm.
stuff first and then move on into the next vein of, oh, all the self-publishing things.
Right.
But yeah,
Okay.
I think you could do it. I mean, I say the more you know early on is always a good thing, but
Yeah.
if you know the time, then it should be okay.
Okay. So for the person who is listening to this and they're like, you know what, Kickstarter sounds like it might be a way to go for me. Do you know of any other resources that they might be able to tap into a course or,
Mm-hmm.
somebody that might is kind of like can walk them through, say they don't have a friend who has done Kickstarter who,
Mm-hmm.
can give them this is the next
Mm-hmm.
steps that you do with it. Do you know of any resources that they could look into?
Well, first of all, I am actually going to be doing a course with my friend CJ
I was like
about
trying to set
Kickstarter.
you
Yeah,
up for that
do
one.
it. Yes. We are still working out the details, but I can get you a link to drop for people to join our Substack, which is just a free newsletter. That you'll know when everything is ready to go. But
Okay.
CJ and I are both like very busy, so we're just like we're planning it, but it's like on the back burner while we both run
It's
our
very low
campaigns.
on the low on the
That's
priority of things
happening.
getting done. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, this is on a very different vein, but that woman that I just mentioned, actually, she chose to go with, it's called Merrick Books, Merrik, I believe. And what they're doing for her is they actually ran the campaign for her, from what I
Okay.
understand. Now they get a percentage of how that works out. I don't know exactly, but they will actually handle the distribution. So they'll
Oh,
be bringing
interesting.
in her books from the printer that she's chosen. She's obviously handling all of the like, oh, she's working with this designer and those things, but those books will be shipped to them and they will handle fulfillment. So that's an option. Now, I would say that's a good option for someone who assumes that they're going to sell a good quantity of books. I don't know what that number would be,
Yeah.
but you just have to make sure it's worth it for you. And then
Hmm.
also another thing I mentioned, shipping as either being handled with Kickstarter or there's other options. And Backer Kit is another option. So if anyone is familiar, if you're not in the science fiction world or fantasy world, you may not know this name, but Brandon Sanderson is massive. And he did a very large Kickstarter. I think it was like $46 million or something. So he actually is doing, I think his campaign is still running, but his campaign this time is on BackerKit. So I don't know why. I'm not sure what made the change, but they're hosting it. So you can actually run a Kickstarter. I call it Kickstarter, but it's not really.
Yeah.
It would be a, I don't even know what you,
Crowdsourcing.
yeah, crowdsourcing on BackerKit. But BackerKit will also work with you if you've done your campaign on Kickstarter. They will handle the shipping and like taking, like
Really?
they'll do add-ons and stuff past the campaign. That's something to consider. I am still on the fence. I don't think I will use them for this campaign. I've pretty much worked in all of my pricing anyways to include shipping, which is still insanely expensive in America and even more so for over, US or excuse me, international. But with BackerKit, you would see more of a genuine number of what you've made on Kickstarter, knowing that shipping would be added later. You just have to make sure that your campaign backers know that because you don't want to surprise anybody thinking, oh, I paid this much for this
Right.
book and I have to pay more. So
Right.
that's maybe a
Yeah.
downside. But those are the first two websites that come to mind as just like additional things. There's, oh, I'm not going to remember the name of it. I did read a book on Kickstarter that I thought was helpful. It's eluding me now, but I can send you the name of it. It's in my Kindle.
Yeah. Please do. And then I'll put
Yeah.
it in the show notes for everybody.
Mhm.
But, well, before we go,
Mhm.
please just give us a little brief blurb of your next Kickstarter, your book
Mhm.
that's coming out. I know it's the second in the series, but people still could like go get the first one and back your second one. So
Yeah,
why don't you
yeah.
like just tell us a little bit about this Kickstarter that you're going to be doing? This episode will probably come out right around the time that the
Okay.
Kickstarter goes live. So let us
Awesome.
know.
Yeah. So to give a little background, the first book, I have to like look at it here because I can't remember. The first book, my like kind of little tagline area said, "A girl in hiding, a boy on the run, the fate of the galaxy between them." And I've just finalized my tagline area for book two, which is "She survived the desert, he re-entered the fight, and the rebellion is rising through it all."
Ooh,
So a word to the wise, they are different main characters for each book. It's going to be a trilogy. So the first book was just two characters. The second book actually has 5 points of view, which
I
has been
love books
fun.
like that.
Yeah. But it expands the world much more. And it actually gives me a chance because I love romance. It gives me a chance to do a new romance for every book. So like it kind of just, I don't have to break up the original couple because I don't
Yeah.
like doing that. So this second book is actually about, I don't know if I've actually said this, but people are going to find out anyways. It's about Tally's sister Merritt and then a character from book one. His name is Leaf. And so it's their story, but Tally and Renner still show up there from book one. They still show up. And then there's an extra character's point of view in there too. So the world is expanding, the rising, which is the resistance in the book, like kind of like your Star Wars resistance is part of
Yeah.
it as well. So I say, and it's not, this is not a hard line. Book one was The Greatest Showman meets Star Wars. And I would say book two is more of like Doctor Who meets a gender bent Aladdin. But with war, I don't know. And more Star Wars, I guess you could say. So
That sounds fun.
yeah. Yeah. So it'll all come out on April 5th with the cover reveal, and it'll last. You've got like 3 weeks. If you decide that you would like to back, you can go check it out. And then eventually by the end of the year, it will come out in all other forms wide, which is exciting.
So if somebody's interested, where do they go
Mhm.
to? I know it's on
Yeah.
Kickstarter, but how
Mhm.
can they easily get there?
Yeah, so you can go to Kickstarter and just in their search bar type in Falling Through the Black and it will come up. But you can also go to eahcreative.com and then you do have to do a little navigating because I have a lot of passions. But at the top it'll say writing and there'll be like the Xeris Galaxy Saga, which is what we're talking about. So it you can find it on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for coming on today and giving us all that really interesting, really helpful. I've learned a lot through this. So I think this will be helpful for somebody who might not have really understood what Kickstarter was or how it could benefit them. So I appreciate you sharing your time with us today, and we look forward to seeing your book coming out in November and this Kickstarter kicking off.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been super fun. I hope people at least maybe start to venture into Kickstarter and see what it's about.
Yeah. Thank you for listening today to the Business of Christian Fiction. Join us next time as we continue this conversation about what it means to write and publish.